businesses that might be interested in that, particularly small businesses, please get them to get in touch with the council. We've just been notified that for the first year, in terms of plastic recycling, everything that was collected curbside has been fully recycled. We've got to 99% last year, but this year it is 100%. I think it's something like 95% of that is done in the UK. Only a small amount goes overseas, but everything is being actually recycled. None of it's going over to landfill sites in other far-flung countries. Couple of things also, we've been asked just to let people know that the council is still trying to help Ukrainian families find hosting families. It's being reminded to people at the moment because obviously it's a time of year where a number of young people are going off to university for the first time, and there might be odd rooms available that people might be looking to find a use for. And the final one was just we've just been advised that BT, not Openreach, but BT have been fined about £12,000 for carrying out works without getting permission of the Highways Authority to do it. So they are keeping an eye on the various utility companies to say you don't dig up holes in the road without having arranged it with us first. So that's something they're trying to keep going. So other than that, happy to take any questions if there are any. And one final brief thing on planning. The planning section, obviously what is now called Somerset North, which used to be Sedgemoor. The service is creaking a bit at the moment, to be brutally frank. We've lost, obviously, our head of service who has left to go to the private sector. Dawn de Vries, who is the lady who was head of the planning team under Mr. Howlett, unfortunately is currently on long-term sick leave. We have then lost a couple of senior planners who've gone for other appointments elsewhere, and we've just lost a couple of the registration staff who have done the same thing. So at the moment the staff are very thin on the ground, and therefore that's meaning that registration, for example, whereas it was averaging 5 days to register a planning application, is now taking 5 weeks. And that is just the start of the process before we even get to the planning officers. So it is creaking slightly. There are plans in place to try and re-recruit, but they are struggling a bit. And Owen's had notifications there from East Brent. They were having trouble getting in touch even in terms of the committee registers. So I think it's a question of if you can bear with. They are doing what they can, but it is going to be a less effective service for the short term at least.
You might find, Bob, of course, is we don't get any plans for a while and we get a whole load of them.
Exactly. Well, if any of you get the weekly updates that are sent through, if you get the full list, normally Sedgemoor's registering something, it's normally between 20 and 40, but averaging about 30. The last few weeks it's been under 10, and that's not because there are fewer applications. It's just because there is a bubble building up in the system, so we will see how that moves. But if there's no other council questions on that one, we've got the financial report. What comes to the clerk?
There's a few items on there. The the statutory payment list for October is as before. There's no change there. That's referenced our minute number 25922, which was approved back in April. This is for our statutory payments as previously listed. So it's probably appropriate to get a resolution to approve that, I think, first of all, if we may. So can we have a...
So I'm going to have a look at statutory. All those in, that's proposed by David, all those in favour? All that's unanimous. Variable payments for October. We've got 4 actually. Pay to payroll for the month of September, and there's not an error, it is September because they work in a month in arrears. Nichols Facilities Management, £100. That tends to be a little bit variable. Office expenses and allowances for the period of quarter July to September 2023, 321.99, and that's about £20 down last year, the same quarter. And then Paul Dixon maintenance work. He did a very quick repair on the stile steps over by Bodies Lane, which he responded to amazingly quickly. He did it the same day, I think. So £65. So there are 4 variable payments which we need to approve for.
questions, of course?
Colin, questions? If not, can I have a proposal that we pay them? Colin, thank you. All those in favour that we pay, please show. That's unanimous as well.
Thank you. Okay. Just a couple of other things. As you know, we have the statutory payments, which we normally set up in April, but there are a number of payments which currently either Amanda, Colin or Bob, or a combination of two, have to approve. And I thought it might be worth the council considering making the statutory payments of 4 other items which come up every month and which need to be approved. So it's basically nickels, which we, as you know, we make a payment every month. I will simply take their last, I haven't done so yet, but I'll take their last 6 months and then divide it by 6. So it'll be a bit of an odd figure probably, it won't be an absolute, but it'll all come to the same money in the end as far as nickels are concerned. So it'll be a spread across 6 months, and that will avoid Colin, Amanda and Bob having to keep on approving that every month. The salary payments are the same, they are approved annually. They used to be done by direct debit when Sedgemoor had the process, but Sedgemoor don't any longer. Of course, Patter use it now, so I'm suggesting that Patter becomes a statutory payment for salaries and also for their service charge, which they make £8.60 a month charge for. So all of those are things that don't vary much from one month to another, hardly at all actually. The only thing that sometimes varies is the salary payments can vary according to tax, because as you know with PAYE you can go up by a couple of pence or down by a couple of pence, but it's not going to be very significant. So those will then be added to the rest of the statutory payments list and make life a bit easier for those that need to authorise it every month. So I just need that to be approved.
Any questions for Owen on that? If not, can I have a proposal that we adopt those for the next 6 months to the end of this financial year?
Yeah, we'll review them again.
Yeah, again then. So thank you, Amanda, for those. All those in favour that we do that show.
Thank you.
That's unanimous as well. Thank you.
Just moving on to a couple of other items. I've got a resolution to approve the upgrading of Council PC to Microsoft 365. I'm currently using Outlook 2010, which is quite an old program, starting to break away a bit actually. Now I've just upgraded my own computer at home to 365 and I've had a nightmare of a job with it, with Windows 11, trying to get it sorted out. So once I've got that sorted out and I know how it all works, hopefully I can now upgrade the councils. But it will be on a subscription basis. I think it works out just for one user, because there'll only be one user, at $59.95 per annum. And of course the thing about the 365 Office is that all the data goes up into the cloud. So you've always got the latest version. And if you get any problems with it, there is always support there for it. So I just need you to agree that that's a good upgrade, but it won't happen immediately, probably not until the end of the year. So you're right, Jeremy.
Members, are you happy that we agree to do that?
Just to keep the whole council's
all those in favour?
up to date.
That's unanimous as well.
Grant requests to the parish council. We normally at this time of the year put an article in the BKN for any local groups who wish to apply for a small grant. And of course those have to be groups that are local. There has to be a local content in them, and they must be organisations and not individuals. As you know, recently we had a couple of requests for individuals in the guiding fraternity asking for contribution of all their overseas trips, and we're not able to do that. But what we can do is anybody who applies, we can consider a grant for them.
We gave a donation to Citizens Advice, even though they didn't ask for it this time. We make a donation to the Dorset and Somerset Air Ambulance.
We certainly have done previously.
We have done, yeah. many times actually.
Because it came up in the past because there have been people who've been picked up off the knoll or across on the levels when they injured themselves when walking. So yes, it is something that has a benefit locally.
I know.
If you know anybody who works for that organisation, it'd be worth just saying to them, can they just drop us a line?
Okay.
Because that would make it official then, wouldn't
Yes.
it?
Right. I'll do that.
So yeah, that is a recognised local charity, of course.
Yeah.
So, are you happy that we put an article in the BKN to ask any local organisations? Because normally we look at that about January, February time. We set a budget in November and then agree.
So all those in favour of doing that, please, that's unanimous as well.
So there's one, two, not a lot here this moment. Annual request with Eon have asked us for a new fixed agreement for the electricity supply. As you know, we have quite a substantial electricity supply, obviously, since the shop was in place. And they fixed it at a slightly lower tariff than what we've been paying this year, which is quite encouraging. I don't know about you, I don't see a lot of point in changing at this stage, because the whole thing is going to have to be reviewed anyway when we get to the shop situation. So would you be happy as a council just to continue with the lower fix? It will cost us a bit less money and therefore will cost the shop a bit less money as well, because it's a percentage. So are you happy we just transfer that across?
All happy we do that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any against? Abstentions? Okay.
And then the last item, November budget, of course, comes around again next month when we set the budget for 24, 25. And before that, I'll obviously send you a budget sheet out with figures for this year, so you can see what you need to consider when it comes to making a decision next year in November. It's quite an important meeting, that one, the budget setting, I always think, because it's something that affects the tax, council tax for a year ahead, so it's quite important.
So you'll send out some dates to the
I'll
working
send out
group?
today, yeah, there's nothing to decide on that, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
You also probably remember seeing Brent Knoll Charities account statement. There's about 1,450 in there. This is an account that's been sort of sloshing around for years and years and years. It has had a bit of a boost in recent times because interest rates have gone up. And we've got an MG fund, which is set up about 20 odd years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And we're getting about 16 quid for a half year on that. We were getting virtually nothing before. So the interest rates has had a beneficial effect. But I just ask whether there's anything the council want to do with this account, whether they want to leave it as it is, whether they want to use it for some, it's a matter for you. The account is there and it is running.
Very briefly, the history to some extent is there were some charities that were set up many, many years ago, which were for the benefit of the poor of the parish. So there was one that was paid out at Christmas, there was another that was paid out at Easter, and we're going back into I think one of them was associated with Mr. Symes, the one who's got the tomb up in the churchyard. So it does go back a long, long way. We have in the past, because it wasn't as straightforward as maybe in the past of identifying who you give money to as the poor of the parish, and whether that would necessarily be wanted to be received in the way that it used to be. An odd £5 at Easter wasn't going to make a lot of difference to people in the current climate. So what happened was that the charities were merged into the Brent Knoll charities. As Owen said, they were invested to protect the capital sum, which hadn't been done in the dim, distant past. We have made donations sometimes. One time we gave some to the school, and that was on the basis that they were doing swimming lessons. Some of the children couldn't afford swimming lessons, so that by paying for those children, all the children could benefit, because they couldn't go if some of them didn't. So there was a link to the method of charities. So it's that sort of thing that we can use the funds for, in line with what they were originally there for. But as Owen said, it's been there for a while. if members can have a think about the sort of thing that we might be able to put it towards for the benefit of people in the parish, then the funds are there.
Of course, it was locked for a number of years, if you recall, David, when we talked about it. It was, my predecessor, 16, 17 years ago, didn't do anything with it, and by the time we got to actually try and sort it out, we didn't know who the signatories were. And I found out who the signatories were eventually, and they weren't members of the council. So we got them changed over. Bob and I are currently both signatories, and there is one local resident also who's not a councillor now, who was a councillor, who's also a signatory. So we need to make some changes to that eventually, I guess. Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on the finance?
No, that's probably enough to go on with.
Thank you. So in which case that moves on to the matters for consideration, and the first one is AMPR update and further decisions required.
Yeah, I mean, basically we've updated the website as we were asked to do so by the Surveillance Department of Central Government. So the documentation is now in line with the requirements for the AMPR. We're waiting for some highways post installations to be completed so that we can actually put this AMPR on a post. Westcotec have agreed on the previously agreed prices. So they gave us a price earlier in the year, $5,995 for this unit, and that remains that price. They haven't put it up, plus VAT. We have got agreement for the council. We don't need a resolution to approve it, because in fact we've already got a resolution previously from the council to agree to go ahead on it, providing the price remained the same, and it does. So it's really just to update you more than anything else. So I'll go ahead now and purchase this unit, ready to install it in the very near future, hopefully.
Okay. Any questions? No, that's fine. So we then move on to community shop and build items not covered under the group. So we're looking at the retender process, the finish timetable resolution, proceed, forecast timescales for the National Grid project. So do we want to start with the update in terms of National Grid?
Yeah. Colin and Malcolm both came along to the meeting with Gareth Howes. In fact, Gareth was, again, he was very, very quick. I mean, I sent him an email in the morning saying how things were going, on the timing and everything. He said, "Can I come this afternoon at 2 o'clock?" Which I thought was incredible, really, but anyway. So we met up with him and we had a discussion, and I think Colin and Malcolm, I think they set a date at the middle of January as a sort of the outside date. Is that how you saw it, basically?
Yes, yes.
Might be a bit earlier, possibly, but the outside date will be certainly the middle of January for actually starting the whole rerouting process and fixing the problems we got down the end of the green as well. They won't be including the ash dieback as part of their scheme. So, and obviously there's another item to be discussed, is the ash dieback tree. They won't be removing it. They don't need to remove it. Therefore they won't be paying for it either. So that'll be a responsibility of the parish council.
Yes, thank you. Just by way of further information, the ash trees are huge, and I reckon I don't know what you think, David, but it could well be that they come from one trunk.
Yeah.
And of course what will have to happen, no one in their right mind will go and take those trees down while that transformer is live. Yeah, so they'll have to, our problem will be, or the problem will be, is that once the transformer is made dead, then the tree people will come in, and that could take, I don't know whether they'll take them down in a day, but they are substantial, really are. I think I can't see how National Grid would take those down on our behalf. So that is something, I don't know if we can do we need to leave this till the next meeting, or can
Because
we
later on in this item we've got the tree issue with ash dieback, so we can address it under that.
address it there? Okay, thank you.
And I think from the note you sent round, I think the National Grid confirmed that they would do the trenching work that was required.
Yeah, they do all
And
that.
they will deal with it. We
We
don't
cover
need
the cost
to.
of that as well.
Yeah.
Which we did wonder at one stage whether we might have to carry the cost of that, but they will do it all. It's only the tree they're not paying.
Okay. Any questions on the National Grid issue? Okay. So at least we now know the timetable we're working to in terms of by middle of January it should be sorted. Okay. Which if we then look at the ash dieback ones, you will remember that we were obviously approached by the neighbours who had the trees sat on our land but behind their fence. Was going to suggest, we've already had two rough estimates as to the sort of cost that will be involved in doing the tree work. They had one that was given to them as a quote by someone who was doing work next door, which was about £1,600. We had a rough estimate which I brought to the last meeting, which was £1,500 from another tree surgeon. What I was going to ask if you would give us permission to get some proper quotes now to say we need to look at having this done, because they are going to die, they're going to be dropping branches, and that's neither safe for us with the green or for the neighbours, but also to take the opportunity to approach the neighbours and see if they might be prepared to make a contribution, because although technically it's not on their land, they might be prepared to. Malcolm?
The ash trees are not on our land, are they?
No, they are on our land.
Yes, they are.
Because our land is defined by the middle of the green. So although the fence, they're the wrong side, they're the neighbour's side of the fence, but they're our side of the green. So
Oh, right.
there are trees.
That wasn't obvious the other day. So.
Yeah. No, that was, because as you remember...
Also, Gareth mentioned that he'd work in conjunction with the landowner.
Yes. Melina?
Just in light of all of these things going on, I'd like to recommend that we inform our public liability insurers of this new wayleave agreement going across the land.
We can, there's no harm in us notifying them. Ultimately, the cable is already there, because it was there without us knowing it was there, so...
Yeah, no, the actual wayleave agreement though, because it's
But all the
material
wayleave
change,
agreement
isn't it?
is meaning that they have the right of access to deal with their machinery, which is currently sat on the post anyway, so...
Yeah, I just think it would be...
I see no harm in us notifying them, but Yeah, David?
I think the neighbours to do with the tree have already said they might contribute or help contribute.
Yes, They did say they might. Whether, at what level I don't know yet, but we'll see what we can do. But if you're happy to just allow me to go and have that conversation with them and report back to the next meeting, and at the same time get an additional quote, so we've got 3 quotes, that's normal because this is a substantial amount of money. But if you're happy with that, I will go and do that. All those in favour that I do, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. That then moves us on to the apple tree on our agenda. So, following the last meeting, I contacted 3 tree surgeons and asked them basically for 3 options. Option 1 was to take the apple tree down to ground level and treat the stump. The second one was to take it down to ground level and to grind out the stump. And the third one was to look at the ability to to translocate the tree to an alternative location. So we've had 3 sets of 3 quotes come through, and I'll run through them if I can individually. So the first one we had was from Mark Fiddes, who basically said that to take the tree down and treat the stump, he would charge £350 plus VAT. To take down the tree and grind the stump to a level below ground, but obviously there will still be some stump under there, but it will take down, that would be £600 plus VAT. The third option, he said, to move the tree would cost many thousands of pounds, a crane and digger would be required, When moving the tree, you want to damage as few roots as possible. A tree of this size will have a substantial root ball, and having it moved, there could be no guarantee of survival. As such, I would not provide a quote to move it. Then, David Bateman was the second set of trees, that's Brent Tree Services. So he quoted for cut and treat would be £380. Cut and stump grind to, as he described it, 15 centimetres below the ground level would be £500. And to translocate, he said the cost was unimaginable and the chance of survival was 0. DC Tree and Garden Services quoted, and they've said take down and treat £500, take down and stump grind £650, and option 3 was not something that he could be capable of doing. So we've got the three back. So over to members. So Amanda.
Well, I propose we go with the Mark Goody's one where he cuts down the tree and treats it because that's the cheapest option and it will sort the problem out simply in a straightforward manner at a fairly affordable rate.
And just it wouldn't, sorry mister, it wouldn't provide a trip hazard if you're going to leave a stump just, just...
Well, I think because at the moment, the other thing is where I think an issue with the grinding it out is we're not 100% sure what underground services we've got there and what the grinding might disturb. I mean, because already the car park is going like that because of the roots. So we've already got a potential trip hazard there. And I'm guessing if we just painted it with something fluorescent when it's had... Because to cut it, it'll be right down, won't it? Do you think?
Yeah.
It will be sort of flush with the rest.
Yeah.
That's without the treatment to...
No, it would be treated.
No, that would be
Yeah,
treated.
Would be treated as well.
So it'll rot away in time.
I would have thought that was the safest option because I said we don't know what's going on under. I mean, there must be some services under there.
Yeah.
And if in terms of anything that's happening with trenching or alternatively building, if they come across roots and it's already been treated anyway, they'll just remove what's...
Well, they're going to dig through roots.
I would support Mr. Chairman, I would support Amanda's suggestion. And Mark Fidd is £350. The other one was £380. The other one was £500. Mark Fidd is to take it down to ground level and treat it. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so the recommendation has been moved that we go for removal and treatment. Go with Mark Fiddis' quote of £350. All those in support of that, please show. And those against. That's clearly carried, so that's that one. Okay, so that takes us to, we need to talk about tender. So, in effect, where we are at the moment, as we said at the last earlier discussion, we now know that we're looking at the cable being sorted by the middle of January, which enables us to give anyone who does want to tender a timetable that they can work to in terms of when they can be getting on site. So really what we're looking for tonight, I think, is permission to start the re-tendering process, to go out through, obviously, advertising through the various methods that we did last time, and make sure that we then get quotes or tenders in from as many as we can. As you'll remember, the architect said it was perfectly sensible to also just notify all those who expressed an interest last time, should they wish to express an interest again, that's up to them. But our members happy that we get on with going out to tender. Timescales, I think we would be looking at probably, to give people a chance to return and us get a reply back, we're probably looking at making a decision in the middle of December, aren't we, in terms of what tenders we're accepting? Because that gives us 4 to 6 weeks for people to respond to the tender. The tender would go in, the Brent Knoll News version would go out at the beginning of November. Melina?
Will we be advertising in the actual press this time in a timely fashion?
Well, we advertised in the press last time. We were in the
It wasn't in
Mercury.
a timely fashion though, it was very late on.
Well, we were in both the Mercury and the Weekly News, so yes, we would do the same thing. We would get that out at the beginning of the process.
We have three contractors currently who've indicated an interest in being, notified of the tendering process. So there's a starting point there at least.
So are members happy then that we start the process? We're working to mid-December as the decision time and get the adverts out as soon as we can for the various media that we're looking to work with. If I make that as a proposal, are those sorry, Colin.
Yeah, so just to get this timescale,
Yes.
so we're going to advertise this month in October, and tenders would go out on the 1st of November in theory, to give them 4 to 6 weeks. Okay.
Which will be, it should be within the timescale of this year, really, if you look at it realistically.
Okay. All those in favour that we do that, please show. That's unanimous. So that's clearly carried. So I think that
Includes
covers.
the shop items, certainly.
Okay. So then we move on to item C, which is the village contract working group report and decisions to be taken. Do you want to introduce this? Alan?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure, David, because originally were you taking some up, Amanda? Yeah. We're all passing it around.
We were all going to, but then you circulated.
I circulated,
the
yes.
notes from the meeting.
Yes. Basically, it was David raised it I think a couple of meetings ago that we just need to have a review because one of the features of our 3-year contract with Jason is that we review it each November. So it's quite a normal thing to do is to review the contract. So we had a small working group put together, which I think was agreed last month. We had a look at the various components of the contract. And there were a few tweaks to it and a few suggestions to improve the way we operate it. In addition to that, we also had the church came back to us with their agreement for the changes to the churchyard timetable as well. No real change to the church contract other than timescales of when we're going to do things on the various areas. So do you want to just sort of go through the actual
Yeah,
changes
I
that we were proposing?
I think that what had been highlighted was various members of the public have come to different members of the council and voiced concerns about the length of the green and the fact that children in particular were permanently soggy shoes issued because the green was so long. Now part of that is because of the kind of growth we've had this year, but we also identified a need for a tighter cut in general on the green and more cuts, the frequency of the cuts. And we decided that the best way forward could be to exclude some areas of the contract which seemed a little less important in terms of priority, and also to take out a couple of things which were covered by our working parties, like the bushes on the green, which we tend to do as a working party, the spraying around the perimeter of the car park, which doesn't seem to be done, but it was on the contract. There was also a couple of areas that we thought, well, they don't grow very much, like the verge at the bottom of Church Lane, and on the corner by the white railings. And we said that maybe if we extended the number of cuts, then we could get the green in particular cut more frequently, so it would be shorter, and so we're probably looking at spending a bit more money, because we need to give Jason the opportunity to say, well, that's going to cost a little more, but take into account some of the things that we've taken out. So I think that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah. So basically, just to very briefly run through the suggestions, and in terms of the level of length of grass, and obviously David mentioned it in his report this time, and I think at the last meeting John mentioned it again with kids playing on there when they were trying to play football, they couldn't because the grass too long. Whereas if it's being cut more regularly and being cut a little shorter, then when the cuttings are on there, it's not going to have the impact it currently is when they're just as long as they are. So the suggestion that's being made is we move from about 20 cuts per annum to about 30 cuts per annum for the village green, and look for that to be a little bit shorter. Then we also ask him to take into account that as part of that, what was part of the old village green, in fact, so the area in front of the toilet, the area around the flagpole, would be counted as the green when he's doing his maintenance, so that's the regular cuts as well. Then we take out, as Amanda said, the spraying, the hedges, which we tend to deal with the hedges through working parties anyway. And then there's the area of the glebe field, which is being better maintained now than it was under previous owners. And also the area of Church Lane and Brent Street corner, which years ago used to have a lot of grass growth there. The verge has disappeared over the years where they've been scraping out the ditch, so there's very little grass that's growing there now. And the only other thing we were looking to highlight was Station Road. We cut the verge that runs along South Brent Close. A few years ago, we had the hedge cut back because it had grown out over the verge. It's done it again, so the verge has now almost disappeared, which means there's nothing there to look after. So the suggestion was that when we have the Crooked Lane cut done of the hedges along there, which we do regularly, that we get them to do the bit along Station Road as well. There is additional items, there are reductions, so what we were going to do was, if the council are prepared for us to go along this route, we would go back to Jason and say, okay, what would be the amendment to the contract in terms of cost, and at the next meeting we would then have to decide whether that cost is acceptable and whether we wish to do that. But looking for comments or questions from anyone on the council.
I noticed last week he was cutting the playing area, and he did it twice over. He was very thorough. And it was long. I mean, I watched him. He did it, and then came back again and did it all again. So, yeah, he was there about 3 hours. So.
Any other comments or questions? If not, is someone prepared to propose that this is the way we move forward? David, thank you. If there's no other comments or questions, those in favour that we do that, please show. That's unanimous as well, so we'll do that and then report back to the next meeting.
Okay, next time to speak to Jason on that.
Okay. Then we've got the PCC request for identification of churchyard area, which Owen mentioned. So that will all be part of Jason's contract, which will come back to us at the next meeting.
And there won't be an additional cost for that. That's just simply changing